Welcome to Scouting America and the Architecture Merit Badge. This is a project-based companion that works alongside all of the resources you already have. It works with the workbook and it draws a little bit of information from the Merit Badge pamphlet, but you can complete the whole Architecture Merit Badge with this video. But first, how about some introductions? My name is Phyllis Henderson. I am part of the Capital Area Council in Austin, Texas, and a proud parent of 2 Eagle Scouts. I'm also the owner and founder of a youth architecture program where we take all sorts of crazy materials and we introduce architecture to kids of all ages. So that's where we're going to start today. The plan is to follow the basic requirements and sequence of the workbook. But things are going to overlap quite a bit. So lots of questions in that workbook can be answered in a lot of different ways. So it's a great idea to review that workbook and know what they're asking so that you can kind of fill in the blanks whenever something pops up. Today, we are going to tour the community of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Rio de Janeiro is a huge seaside city in Brazil, and it's known for its awesome beaches and a whole bunch of very cool architecture. This is the Carioca Aqueduct. All of these great, cool arches are stacked on top of each other, and the whole point of this was to carry water from far away into the city. This thing was built in the 18th century, so we call it colonial architecture, meaning that this is the style and the time period that it was built. Aqueducts are actually so cool if you think about the very simple thing that it has to do, which is just carry water from a higher place through gravity all the way down into the city. Today, the Carioca Aqueduct is used as a scenic tramway bridge. Okay, let's take a look at something completely different. This is the São Francisco de Penitência. This is a church famous for being a Baroque church. So that's a style of architecture. And Baroque means that you're going to find a lot of intensive gold color, a lot of detailed carvings, and a bunch of fancy decoration. Interestingly, the outside of this church is kind of simple, so it's very much in contrast with this really elaborate inside. This is a perfect example of Baroque architecture. So anytime someone says Baroque, you know you're looking for opulent ornamentation, intense light and shadow, something that's going to make you look up and go, oh my gosh, what am I looking at? It's absolutely awe-inspiring, lots of emotion, sweeping curves, twisted columns, massive domes, and a ton of decoration everywhere. And that is almost directly opposite from what we would find in modernism. So there's a couple of modern buildings in Rio de Janeiro. This one is called the Gustavo Capanema Palace. This building was designed as a monumental, prestigious headquarters for the Ministry of Education and Health. So it was built between 1937 and 45, which is the height of modernism. When we talk about modernism, the things we're looking for is no decoration at all, kind of a rejection of ornamentation. So it's really more about the form, it's more about minimalism and using industrial materials like steel and glass and concrete. A lot of people think modernism is super boring because it's just a bunch of straight lines. Well, that could be true, but something super cool about this building is they raised the building off the ground, and that opened up all of this cool space for pedestrian traffic, for people to walk around underneath, but it also made space for a garden. And the garden takes advantage of a whole bunch of sweeping curves and rounded edges. So the two of these things are really in contrast and work well together. This is one of the main hallmarks of modernism. This building was the very first modernist project in Brazil, so it's super historically important, and the brand new beginning to modernizing the whole country. So this is a landmark building. Okay, there is no way possible to visit Rio de Janeiro without noticing this guy. This is a nearly 100-foot statue called Christ the Redeemer. And I want you to know about it, not just because it's an icon, but also because it's an example of Art Deco style. Even though this was built in 1931, which is very close to the modern building we just looked at, it's really considered Art Deco because of a few things. In Art Deco, we do have some sort of textures, we have patterns, we have bold designs, and we have decoration. Whereas in modernism, really all of that has been taken away. So for this statue, which is, by the way, not a building, we're looking at stylized geometry where the statue has kind of rigid lines, geometric folds in the robe, but it is also somewhat decorated. The exterior is covered in thousands of triangular soapstone tiles. So we see a lot of texture and decoration. There's sort of an artisanal layer that is associated with Art Deco that we don't see in modernism. This makes the Christ the Redeemer statue a cultural and national symbol. It is a symbol of faith and peace. It's actually one of the 7 wonders of the world. It was an amazing engineering feat and is one of the most recognizable images of Rio de Janeiro. Almost equally as recognizable are the thousands of stacked houses built along the hillside in Rio de Janeiro. Take a look at this.
If you go to a Google map of Rio de Janeiro and put it into 3D mode, you can see what the city looks like as it was designed by urban planners. But you'll notice parts of the city that don't look like the rest. See the difference? The people who live in these parts of the city with the clean lines and the well-thought-out design are called people of the asphalt. The people who live in these parts of the city are called people of the hill. Even though the people of the asphalt and the people of the hill live closely intertwined throughout the city, they live vastly different lives. These informal communities that look like houses stacked on top of each other, sprouting out of the jungle, are called favelas, home to both vicious drug gangs as well as some of the most peaceful, creative, and resourceful people in Rio. A favela is a community that was built without any oversight of a public authority. No zoning, no building codes, no public services. These places just kind of grew out of the hills over time thanks to 2 main factors. First was slavery. Brazil imported 11 times more slaves than the United States did, and Rio alone was home to more slaves than the entire American South. Slavery ended in 1888, and free slaves, still denied many rights in society, built these informal communities on their own. In more recent times, favelas have been fueled by massive migrations from rural Brazilians coming into the city looking for work. Not able to find affordable housing, these workers built their own communities. Today, 25% of Rio's residents live in these favelas. I spent time in 6 of Rio's favelas to try to figure out what happens when parts of a city develop without the presence of a government. This is Rocinha. It's Brazil's largest favela, and it has been dubbed a city within a city. It's a completely self-sufficient economy, the result of decades of makeshift solutions to basic needs like electricity and running water. Without a formal government presence, the residents of Rocinha created their own association, which helps coordinate public projects and resources. Since these associations grew up totally informally by people who had no training in public administration, the resulting community design brings with it a little more zest and creativity than your traditional city. But make no mistake, Rocinha is a full-on, functioning mini-city within the city of Rio de Janeiro. This impromptu resourcefulness is common within favelas. Here I am in Vidigal, a favela not far from Rocinha. This man Paulo is showing me his garden, but it wasn't always a garden. 15 years ago, this hill that we stand on was teeming with garbage. Paulo decided to clean it up, planting trees and cultivating a garden space that now produces fruit. He did this without asking permission because, after all, there was no one to ask permission from. If you look around the garden, you'll realize that everything is made from trash. On the other side of the city is a favela called Mare. People in this community have created art centers for young people to come and learn new skills. They also support established artists to create projects around the city that explore and communicate life in the favela. Here they are building a model of their favela out of recycled wood. In Providencia, a favela near the port zone, I met up with this guy, Mauricio, a photographer who lives in this amazing house. Mauricio photographs life in the favela and provides transparency to the good and the bad of these places. So why are these people who live in poverty and neglect so driven to create beauty in order to survive?
The fact that favelas are informal and unregulated, it means both that they can become incredibly vibrant because people can take this attitude and build on qualities and be creative and change your environment. But it also means that you can get incredibly dysfunctional places when the energy and the kind of approach is the opposite. So you have these two extremes and they come out of the same force.
All right, so that's Teresa Williamson. She's an urban planner who actually studies the favelas in Rio. And she works with a whole bunch of different groups to try to figure out kind of like, what is the pulse of this place? How can we make improvements? Is there anything we can do? And she's done a lot of really cool work. So this is a great example of what you can do with an architecture background. You can go into urban planning and you can study whole cities and design whole cities instead of just doing like a house or a building. We're going to take a really strong look at the idea of the stacked house because Rio de Janeiro is not the only place that this happens. We are going to look at stacked houses from all over the world, and we're going to start with these because they're just so cool. Take a look at how these houses are literally stacked one on top of the other. And I want you to notice how one person's roof is actually the front yard of the person who's living right above them. You might notice that a few of them have some green space on top. It's really, really interesting. Here's another project that looks kind of similar, but it's actually very, very different. If you notice, these houses are built up on the side of a mountain in this valley. This is actually in Tibet, and it's called the City in the Sky. It is an ancient city and the largest Buddhist community that exists. Here is another completely different settlement, looks very similar. This one is in Italy and it's called Cinque Terre. It's 5 cities that are linked together kind of with this walking or hiking path. And the thing I want you to notice about this city is kind of what does it look like when you get inside some of these places between these buildings and houses. They're really, really small slots of space, which are pretty cool. You can see through them. Sometimes they're decorated. Sometimes they're really pretty. Some of them have stairs. Some of them are flat. It's just a really interesting place to be. It looks like a lot of fun to go and play, right? Here's another one that's kind of just funny because it looks totally like it's right out of Minecraft. It looks completely like you could just snag this right out of Minecraft. This is just a project in Canada, and the designers were looking to see if they could give everybody a really good view and everybody a little roof terrace, so a little garden of their own. Stacked houses are super cool to see in person, but they're also great inspiration for art. Here's some drawings that are just imaginary, but really cool. This is nice because you don't have to worry about gravity. You don't have to worry about the house falling down. You can have it stacked however precariously you'd like, and they do, right? Some of these are super funny. This one is actually from Howl's Moving Castle. Not exactly a stacked house. It's more of like just a conglomeration of a bunch of houses smashed together, but I thought it looked great for inspiration. As we start to think about how might we build our own stacked house today. Part of the requirement for this merit badge has to do with sketching some sort of building. Well, we're going to go on a side quest and we're going to build a sketch model of a stacked house. That's something we're going to tackle a little bit later and I will walk you through the whole thing. But first, Here's a guy who actually does that. He's using hot glue and probably cardboard that he's painting, and he's got some cool structure on the inside to really hold this thing up. But what I love about these is that he's attaching weird stuff. Like there's some sort of thing on the left here. Is that a wishbone? I don't know what that is. But he's using little columns and little tubes and little ladders to just really make it interesting. So you can start to imagine yourself in there when you add details like that. And this is so much what we're going for. We want to explore the idea of a stacked house. We're going to play around with some of these concepts with the really, really skinny walkways between the houses, putting one house on top of another, connecting them with stairs. Maybe we want to connect them with string, and maybe we want to put details like cats and dogs, and maybe we want to draw trees. So I'm going to start by showing you a couple of ideas of how you might get started. You don't want to follow along with this demonstration because I'm going to jump ahead. But first, let's talk about expectations and what we're actually going for. What we're about to do is called building a sketch model. So just like you would take a pencil and a piece of paper, if you have an idea and you're going to sketch it out, right? You're just kind of like trying to save your idea. Same thing with a sketch model. You are going to just build something really quick. It's going to be probably kind of ugly. It's going to have to be cut up or torn up just to get it to be right. And it's not perfection at all. So this is not a finished, beautiful piece that you're going to put on your fireplace mantle. This is an idea maker. So this part is totally up to you. I'm going to show you a simple, easy way to get started with this idea with just using some tape and some paper and some markers. You could use cardboard or recycled materials or whatever you want. This model is completely yours. I'm just going to give you a little bit of an idea on how to get started with just basic materials. So where do we begin? We're going to start with a couple of pieces of paper. Start with one, and what we're going to do is we're going to fold this piece of paper in half. You can do it either way. I'm going to do it the short way. And then once you do that, you'll have this V shape. You're going to see that there's a big, long, open side, and what we want to do is tape that. You want to tape it all the way across, and it's way easier if you put it down on your desk. So you do it kind of halfway, then you flip it over, tape it again, and you end up making this kind of envelope shape, right? Then lay it flat on your desk again, fold it one more time in the exact same direction, and then you're going to have this tiny little V shape. Perfect. That's what you're looking for. The next thing is I'm just going to flip this back and forth a couple of times for no other reason than to just get a good strong fold. And now for the magic. Yes, magic. When you open this thing up, you may have to push it down on your desk one more time, but you're going to open it up and find a perfect rectangular prism. Magic. So you've already made space. Look how cool this is. So you can imagine a person in here, or if you're not really into people, you can imagine a little possum or rat thing. I don't know what this is. Anyway, the coolest thing in the whole world about this is that it lays flat. That means we can cut it really easily. So what we want to do is cut 2 or 3 little squares. You can make tall ones and you can make short ones. You can make them different sizes. The absolute coolest thing ever is that we're working with paper. That means we can cut it, we can lay it flat. You can draw doors, you can draw windows. I've got a tiny little funny little kitty cat in this window. These are your building blocks to make your stacked house. But what's a good way to put these together? Let me give you the best advice ever. Tape is your best friend. You can very, very simply find a good place to start pulling these things together and just use tape to make them stick. You could do the whole entire project just like this, and it would be amazing. I will also show you some other cool ways, but just start playing around with this, and your stacked house will start coming together. If you want to be super crazy fancy, here's a little trick. You can take one of your cubes and just flatten it. take a pair of scissors, and what you're going to do is cut through both sides at one time, but only halfway down. So it'll look kind of like this. You'll have a little cut on each side next to each other, and then it's only going halfway down. You'll be able to slide another cube right into it. This will make you look like you know exactly how to make a very cool house. You may have also noticed that there's really no floor and there's really no ceiling, right? So what if we want to make that? You can just flatten one of your cubes and this time cut along the long side, but you're cutting through both pieces at one time, two sides, and it looks kind of like this. It looks like, a big giant shark trying to eat you. And you can slide a piece of paper in there. Ta-da! So boom, you've got a roof. Oh, look, it's falling apart. Of course it is. So tape is your new best friend. You can tape all this stuff. It doesn't need to be pretty. It just needs to stick together. So the whole point is to play, find a way to stick this stuff together. You can see it's not always pretty. This is just a little sketch model. Find some things that you love about it. And then once you've got your main building, play around and add some stairs or add some balconies. And here's a little tip. If you're gonna draw on this or cut these things up, do them flat on your table before you attach them. That will make it so much easier. Ooh, but what about some windows? You can take the corner of one of your cubes and do a few slices like this and push in a couple of those little tabs that you just made. You can go ahead and kind of press and fold these little inserts like you see here, and it makes kind of this interesting little opening. You could also just fold your little panel in half, chop a hole in it like this, like in one side. You can also totally make a really simple opening that can also double as a little balcony with just two cuts. So the idea is play around, see what you can do. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake, it's only paper. So you just need to play. If you don't like it, set it off to the side, hand it to a friend, see if they can do anything that looks really cool with it. The coolest thing that you can possibly do is to start putting people in there. Look at the spaces you've made. If you have the opportunity to have somebody with a phone or a camera or even some cool lighting, you can see just by playing with a little bit of lighting with a flashlight, how many cool spaces you've actually created. So your spaces are there, but be sure to look at them in a special way and see what you actually made. Another trick is that you might want to turn your project upside down. It may work better that way. I've seen it happen before.
All right, you've got this. Go and enjoy your side quest, have a little bit of fun, and do the sketch model. When we come back, we're going to talk about the architecture profession and how the favelas are actually potentially really good candidates for sustainable green architecture. All right, so congratulations. By now, we've talked about the historical significance of several different places in Rio de Janeiro. We've kind of zoomed in and done a deep dive on the self-built, really cool stacked houses there. We've even built our own stacked house. We're calling it a sketch model. Maybe you even decided to sketch something. That takes a lot of really cool requirements off your list for completing this merit badge. We're going to slide right into the next part of this, which is all about sustainability. This conversation goes hand in hand with the historical significance of the favelas in Rio de Janeiro. So when we're talking about sustainability and architecture that's good for the environment, we often talk about small footprints, right? So like the smaller the footprint of the building, the taller the building can be, the more people we can put there without impacting our landscape quite as much. So we usually talk about that as something really good. But if you have a lot of people in one space and they're kind of living on top of each other, there can also be a lot of crime. There can also be overcrowding. So just because we're saving space on the landscape doesn't mean that we're doing a great job with the quality of life that's provided there, right? The favelas do an amazing job of using the landscape, building into the side of this hill and this valley,
and it does a great job of having people really closely knit. So you can have this really close-knit community because you're all so close together, but it can also be a very stressful place to live in that feels more like containment where you can't actually escape and people become a little bit more violent and there's more crime. When things become so contained, there aren't as many jobs and people can't actually sustain themselves. So we end up with this situation that is not ideal sometimes. So on the one hand, we are excited that the houses are built close together and they're really taking advantage of our landscape. It's also really hard to provide services to these houses, right? So things like sewage and garbage pickup don't come provided when you don't have some sort of a city plan. So what happens in these communities is that people start figuring out their own solutions. So you have 10 different ways to get rid of human waste, and you have 10 different ways to get water into your favela, and you end up with a bunch of people competing for the same resources. But there's also some good news, because what happens when you have competition? People start getting super creative. Here's one guy who decided that he was going to fix the problem of overheating by providing a green roof to his favela. Take a look at this.
This guy in Brazil is turning rooftops in Rio's favelas into gardens, and it's helping cool down entire neighborhoods. This is Luis Cassiano, founder of Tito Verde Favela, and he's helping solve a huge problem. See, favelas can be 20 degrees Celsius hotter than surrounding areas, creating dangerous heat that causes serious health issues, and air conditioning is really expensive. But Luis found a solution. He created a lightweight green roof system that works on the kind of roofs favela homes already have. First, an engineer checks the roof safety, then a waterproof vinyl sheet is added. Instead of heavy soil, a lightweight plastic fabric made from recycled bottles acts as the soil. Hardy succulents and low maintenance plants, often salvaged or donated, are then planted on top. These green roofs create safer and more livable conditions for residents, and the best part is, they cost just $1 per square foot compared to $11 for conventional green roofs. Working with schools and community groups, Luis trains local residents to build and maintain the roofs themselves, and you'll now find them on homes, bus stops, daycare centres, and even food trucks throughout the area. With green spaces usually found in wealthier areas, green roofs are bringing equality to low-income neighbourhoods, helping not only physical health, but mental health too.
Another super cool aspect of the green roof is they're using renewable natural resources. So plants are renewable resources, right? So much better than like shingles or a metal roof that brings with it a lot of heat. So a renewable resource is something that keeps on growing, that you can easily get more of, or at least get more of over time. You're not going to run out because it's a natural resource, right? So let's talk about recycled materials. You can tell by looking at these awesome stacked houses that they are basically scrapped from whatever is around, right? People are just looking to find whatever they can build with, and they're using it in their home. There's a lot of repurposing of materials, and there's a lot of adaptive reuse. So what we mean by adaptive reuse is that you're using something for something other than its first intended purpose. So who knows, you're taking a car windshield and you're making a window out of it, or you're taking a big piece of scrap metal and you're making a roof, right? One super awesome thing about adaptive reuse is that it doesn't have to be just a piece of scrap metal, right? It could be the whole building. So some of these buildings could have been just completely bulldozed and start over, right? But instead, people have either repurposed them or they've renovated them. Take a look at this guy whose favela actually won an award for House of the Year.
Eu sinto muito orgulho da minha casa ter ganhado esse prêmio, porque as notícias que toda a mídia global costumam tratar de lugares e pessoas da onde a gente vem, que é a periferia, são notícias sensacionalistas. Muito difícil trazer os materiais, porque é um beco de mais ou menos 50 degraus, tem uma parte do beco que nem tem degrau, né, é só uma rampa. barraco subindo e subindo pro topo do mundo.
Eu gosto de dizer que essa casa ela foi concebida como uma casa que se parece muito com as casas da favela, né? Com as casas que estão aqui em volta mesmo. No entanto, ela é diferente, desde a segurança, né, da estabilidade da obra, passando por questões ambientais, de conforto ambiental, de ventilação, de iluminação naturais.
All right, so that is super cool. One of the ridiculous things about this whole conversation is that these houses are not normally designed by architects. They're normally shacks and they're normally just kind of pieced together, right? So the fact that a favela won this very prestigious award was pretty unique. Here's a couple of hand-drawn sketches of this project, and it's very cool to just see how loose and kind of messy these things are. And then you look at that in contrast to this computer rendering, which is sort of, it's computer modeling for sure, but it is definitely a very close relationship between the idea of something that you sketch out fast and then really taking those ideas and literally pulling apart this little house and saying, okay, where are all the features going to go and how are they going to fit together? Architects will do all sorts of drawings, including these computer modeling techniques. And here's one that's called an elevation. This is just a super flat drawing, like you're looking right at the side of the building. And you can even see he's got like a little person there standing on the balcony. And of course, we also work with floor plans, which is like taking the roof off of that building and just looking straight down on it as if it were completely flat. And you can see all the walls and even like where the furniture would go. One thing that real architects do all the time, especially ones who are working with existing buildings, is they have to go in and they have to measure what's already there. So we have to create drawings of what's existing, right? One of the requirements of the Architecture Merit Badge is to measure a room and then make an accurately scaled drawing of that room. We're going to look at how to do this in a couple of ways. The first one is just really quick, just to give you an overview, and then we'll show you in more detail how to really do it right. Check this out.
Here's how to make a floor plan to scale. Start by making a rough sketch of the room so you know what measurements you need. This might include the perimeter of the walls, dimensions of your doors and windows, and of course furniture measurements. Now your rough sketch will look a little like this with all your dimensions put into place. Now we're going to transfer the rough sketch to an actual scale model, and now you need your graph paper. One box is going to equal 6 inches. We are grabbing the first measurement, which is 13 feet. I'm going to double it, making it 26 boxes. So let me show you that again. The window wall is 11 foot, 8 inches. Because we're doing 6 inches per box, the 11 feet will be doubled, making that 22 boxes. The remaining 8 inches will be another box, so 23 boxes, and barely a touch of a 24th box. We want to add our doors and windows exactly where they go, so let me show you how I did it. I measured from the wall to the start of my pocket door was 6 feet, 3 inches. 6 feet, I need 12 boxes, and then the 3 inches is half of another box. So same thing on the other side. From the wall to the start of my pocket door is 4 feet, 1 inches. So 4 feet, I need 8 boxes, and then a touch of the next box over for the 1 inch. My room to scale now looks like this. So now let's add some furniture using the exact same technique. Once you get it all drawn to scale, make sure you label what it is and cut out your pieces. With your movable furniture, you can see the different layouts that your room is capable of while also ensuring that you have enough walking space. For example, I could not put the bed centered on this wall because you would not have enough walking space to get into the bathroom. I love doing this because I can really see what the room is capable of with the furniture that I currently own, and I can see that if I want to buy any other furniture, what sizes will fit in this space.
Okay, so there you go. That's like your 2-minute fast TikTok version. I also wanted to share another video with you from an interior designer who kind of talks this through a little bit slower and shows you piece by piece how she does it. Take a look at this one.
I'm going to show you exactly how I go about floor planning a room. So whatever room I'm starting with, I'm going to make a rough sketch of the room. So today I'm going to show you how I did my daughter Abby's bedroom. So she has a rectangular shaped room, kind of like this. She's got a little closet right here, so I'll leave an opening for the closet. Her doorway goes like this. And then she has a nice big window over here. And that's about it. So once I sketch the room, then I'm gonna go around and I'm going to take my tape measure and I'm gonna measure every little space and then record it here on this sheet. So I've already done the measuring for that. So this was 15 feet, 3 inches. Okay, so kind of a rough sketch just to get all of your measurements down. Okay, so I finished my rough room sketch and now I want to transfer this onto the graph paper and make it to scale. So oftentimes 1 box will equal 1 foot, but that's going to make it a little small on this page and I want it to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to do 1 box will equal 6 inches. So every time I have 1 foot of measurement, it's going to be 2 boxes. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to look up at my rough room sketch and I'm going to transfer that to my graph paper, making sure that I do the exact measurements. This first top measurement was 15 feet, 3 inches. So I'm going to do, I'm doing 1 box is 6 inches, so I'm going to have to do double that. So 15 will be 30 boxes. So I'll start right here. I'm going to count 30. So right there is 30, but then I also had that 3 inches, so 3 inches would be half a box. So I'm going to go till right there. So I'll go ahead and draw that. Okay. Then we're going to do this little area right here is going to be 1 foot, 9 inches. So for 1 foot, I need to go down 2 boxes, 1, 2. Then 9 inches would be an entire box, and then half a box. And then for the window, I like to do a little box shape, so I know it's a window. The door goes about like that. Okay, so this is Abby's room actually drawn to scale. Okay, so after your room is all drawn to scale, then you can start drawing the furniture. And you do the exact same thing. You take your important measurements. We're still gonna do 1 box equals 6 inches. And we'll do the bed. So the bed was 3 feet, 5 inches. So I've got to double it for 3. So that would be 6 by 5 inches. So almost to the end of a box. And then 6 feet, 6 inches. So that would be 12. 12 plus another box for 6 inches. And then I like to write what it was. So that's the bed. You can make little, you can do like a pillow if you want, so you can know what it is. So you're gonna go ahead and just keep making all of your different pieces until you have those all created to scale. Okay, so once we have drawn all of our little items to scale on our sheet, then we are ready to go ahead and cut these out. Okay, now that I have all of my little pieces cut out, I can take my room and my furniture, and it's all to scale. And the reason it's nice, like I could just draw the furniture on here, but then I'd have to erase every time I moved it. If I have them all cut out separately, then I can move things around as many times as I want until I feel like I have a good layout for the room. So this is the neat thing about doing it this way, is you can play around with lots of different combinations. And every time you're looking at buying a new piece of furniture for the room, you can make a little template for it and see how it's going to fit in the room. So pretty cool, right? So that is how you make a floor plan.
Now that you know how to do that, the last thing we have to talk about is, what if you're really interested in being an architect? What kind of jobs are available? Do you have to just be the architect and do the architect job? No, of course not. We've got so many different things. So you could do what I'm doing. You could be a teacher. You could teach at a college level. You could actually teach design studio. You could travel and write about architecture for Architect Magazine. You could be an urban planner. So lots of skills that we learn as architects in architecture school are great for a lot of different jobs. In fact, if you go to school for anything related to the built environment, the first 2 years are the same for everyone. So if you want to be an urban planner or a landscape architect or a construction manager, an interior designer, or just a regular architect, you actually go through the same schooling for the first couple of years. Then you break off and you start studying something that's more specific to what you're excited about. The things you learn in those first 2 years are amazing. They are talking about design thinking. They're talking about problem solving and asking people to come up with ideas that are innovative and new and creative. It requires a lot of independent thinking and a lot of self-driven motivation to stick with it, but also learn to trust your instincts and know that no matter how hard things get, you're going to be able to problem solve your way out of it. The best news ever? You're not problem solving by yourself. You're working with a big team of people. Getting a project built is a multidiscipline, multi-level, multi-year process normally. So it takes a lot of people and a lot of coordination. If this set of skills and working as a team sounds familiar, it should. It's exactly what you do in Scouts. If managing a project, being organized, having a big idea, and having a bunch of people help you execute it sounds familiar, it should. That's what your Eagle project is based on. So all these skills that you learn in Scouting translate very well to a career in architecture. And those are skills that you can use in any job, no matter what you decide to do. Think of it this way, just through Scouting, you're already halfway there. Okay, that totally wraps up everything you need to do for the Architecture Merit Badge. I hope you had as much fun as I did and that you'll explore your world in a whole new way.